Hello, my name is James Ziegler, and I will be your child's IB history teacher for senior year this year. Just want to start off by saying, first off, it's been an awesome year so far. Great group of kids, IBers, you typically are, but really have enjoyed getting to know each and every one of them. And again, have had awesome conversations with them in class, especially in our seminar that we had this last week. So truly do appreciate all their participation and engagement so far this year, and looking forward to just an awesome semester and next semester too. So with that being said, a little bit about myself. My name again is James Ziegler. I've been teaching here at Carmel High School for 16 years now, but I started out at IU as a history and political science major before switching to education. Then I did my student teaching at North Central. And then after that, I was at Lawrence North for a year doing various maternity leave positions, and then have been here at Carmel ever since, and absolutely love teaching and feel just as energetic, passionate about it as when I first started. So just a little bit in terms of my philosophy of teaching in the classroom. Number one, I just want to make sure that all our IB students and all my students that I have always feel safe, welcome, included in our classroom, that they can be free to be themselves, and try to create an environment where they feel safe sharing, especially since we do a lot of class discussion and seminars in our course. In addition to that, I also want your children to realize that I am here to help them in every way I can to reach their full potential. So with that said, I'm always happy to meet an SRT before school, after school, if they're ever struggling with any content or any historical thinking skills that we're working on. In addition to that, I also allow my students to pretty much retake or redo any assessment they don't do well on. So even if it's just a small class right, current event assignment, all the way up to our quizzes and tests, should they ever not perform well, just please encourage them to come see me, because like I said, I will allow them to redo or retake pretty much any assessment in our class so that they could show me, that they did grow, that they did relearn the material that they may have missed before. And I'm always happy to award that. Now, if it's something like a bigger assessment, like a test, I may ask that student to complete an action step before they earn the right to do the retake. So for example, if there's a test and I provided a study guide and the student didn't fill out the study guide, I may ask them to complete that first before they're eligible to do the retake. Or I might even just ask them to come see me in SRT, and we'll talk through some of the content or the skills that they didn't understand before they can retake that assessment. But like I said, a lot of opportunities that are there in order to earn points back. Also before assessments, and especially before the IB exam in May, I'll hold review sessions, typically over like Google Meet or Zoom. And so those are great resources for your youth as well. Another major philosophy of mine is just making sure that students are staying engaged in class and see why what we're learning in history is still relevant to their lives today. And sadly, a lot of history is repeating, and there's a ton of connections we can make between our course content senior year and what's going on around the world today. And so one of my goals to kind of help with engagement and relevancy of learning is just helping to utilize current events to teach history and make as many connections as we can, because that also fosters critical and creative thinking as well. And then one of the other things is obviously making sure that our students have the skills necessary, not just to be successful on the IB exam, but also as they move on to the next stage of their life, whether that be entering the workforce, or most of our students will be moving on to a 2 or 4 year college program. So many of the skills we work on in our class will be transferable to the workplace and to upper academia. So with that, we will work on things this year like sourcing, and how do we determine and evaluate the credibility and reliability of a source based on its origin. So who created the source? What do we know about that individual's credentials? What about the publisher? When was it published? Where was it published? Also, what was the purpose of a source when it was created? All of those things are tools that we can use to analyze the validity or limitations of a source. And that's something that is applicable when doing history research or just, going out on the web in general today. Another skill I'll work with students a lot on is just, critical and creative thinking and being able to connect the dots, helping them understand how did maybe World War One set the stage for World War II, and how did World War II feed into the origins of the Cold War, and kind of see how history is often linked together and we cannot separate ourselves from that. Another thing that we'll be working on is reading comprehension well as visual comprehension. Also, we'll be working on a skill of running comparison and running contrast statements, where we compare and contrast two sources over the same topic, but maybe with different perspectives. And then we will also work on just helping them become better analytical writers, and structuring an argument, not only with a solid thesis statement, but also how can they support their claims with evidence, as well as analyzing how the evidence they provide supports the arguments they're making. So a lot of historical thinking skills that they will need to be successful, both for the IB exam and in the future, are hallmarks of our course. Now, the very last thing I just want to touch on here is our Canvas course for IB history. So when students click into our Canvas modules, they will see at the top of the module, there will always be a lesson agenda linked. And in that lesson agenda, I try to be as specific as possible with regards to what we're doing that day in class, and it's broken down step by step. Then underneath the lesson materials header, students will always find any resources that we used in class that day for the lesson plan. Also, if we ever go through any class notes that day, copies of the notes presentations will be linked in there. And then lastly, there will be a homework materials header. And underneath that homework materials header, there will always be any resources that students need in order to complete that night's assignment. So Canvas is a great resource, awesome one-stop shop for students, especially if they are ever absent. If you or your child ever have any specific questions or concerns for me, please do not hesitate to reach out. Would be more than happy to provide any assistance I can. I always try to get back within at least 24 hours at the latest. But like I said, just please let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything I could do to better support your child in our class. And I'm really looking forward to working with this group for the rest of the year. Thank you.